We're now going to make a rather unusual but a very rich recipe, and it's called a chocolate maca bomb. Now, it's a versatile recipe in that you can use it as a dessert, it can be used instead of a plum pudding at Christmas, or it makes a wonderful adult birthday cake. But the basis for the maca bomb is an actual 2-pound Madeira loaf. So we're going to make a basic Madeira for starters. And to make the Madeira mixture, which is also, by the way, called the Victoria sponge, I use the all-in-one method for this particular recipe here. And what that means is we put all the ingredients into the mixing bowl at once. So here we have 7 ounces of our Odlums self-raising flour. Here we have 125 grams, that's 4 ounces of caster sugar. Here we have 25 grams, that's 1 ounce of ground almonds. I like to add ground almonds to a Madeira mixture because I find it helps to keep it nice and moist. Next we add 125 grams, that's 4 ounces of margarine. 2 eggs, again at room temperature. And finally, for the Madeira mixture, we add 3 tablespoonfuls of cold water. So we've all the ingredients now in the mixing bowl. It's just a matter of taking your electric mixer and giving them a blend. Now, it's important that you don't overbeat. Your cake will be very tough after baking if you do that. But just barely beat until all the ingredients have come together. And using the electric mixer, that will happen in about 60 seconds if your marge is at room temperature, as is the case here. So, there we have all the ingredients now beaten together. And as you saw, that didn't take very long. But there is some of the mixture there on the beaters. So to save wasting that, I just like to tip them as I did there against the glass bowl, just to remove any of that loose mixture. Okay, we're now going to transfer this to the 900 gram or 2-pound loaf tin, which I have lightly greased. And I've also, in this case, lined the base of the tin. Now, can I tell you here that this same amount of mixture will make you a 7-inch sandwich or a 7-inch deep cake as well. So this is the basic mixture you could use, for example, if you wanted an almond-flavoured cake, you could add some almond essence to that mixture, a few drops. A lemon-flavoured cake, add the juice and rind of a lemon. Orange, use the orange rind or orange juice, the juice of an orange rather, in the mixture. So it is a very versatile basic Madeira mixture. All we do now is transfer that to the loaf tin. And as I said, we have the tin prepared. We also have the oven preheated to 170 degrees centigrade. That's 325 degrees Fahrenheit or gas mark 3. And just gently spread the mixture in the tin. Now, don't worry if it's a little rough looking and around the edges, because that does level out in the oven as it's baking. And baking it, as you see there, at quite a low temperature. So 40 to 45 minutes, we'll have our Madeira loaf baked. About 45 minutes have now passed, and at this stage the Madeira loaf should be baked, well risen and ready to come out of the oven. So we'll just check the oven. And wonderful, there we have that lovely, light, well risen sponge mixture. Okay. When you take the tin from the oven, I suggest, as I've done there, you leave it sitting on the wire tray for a few minutes just to give it a chance to set. Now, even though we had the tin lightly greased, if you remember, I still like to run a knife or a spatula, particularly if you're using a non-stick tin, just around the edge to make sure that none of the cake sticks. What we do now, we just gently turn the cake out of the tin. We have baselined it here, quite hot actually. Put that aside. And we're going to leave that now sitting on the wire tray to go completely cold. So to assemble the maca bomb, we simply cut the Madeira loaf into about 15 slices. So I like to get the cake cut completely first of all, because as I'm going to be layering the sponge in a pudding bowl, I'll be able to break off some slices if needs be. So now we've just cut the Madeira cake into 15 slices, and I'm going to just gently leave it aside there for a moment while we make up the filling for the maca bomb. And for the filling, we're using a 250 gram carton of mascarpone cheese, which I'm going to transfer to the mixing bowl. I mix into that just 50 grams, that's 2 ounces of caster sugar, Now, you could get the electric mixer at this stage, but to be honest, I prefer to use a spoon or a spatula, as we have here, just to blend the sugar through the cheese. And this, of course, is a traditional Italian sweet cheese, or a dessert cheese, as we could call it. So, there we have the sugar mixed through. I have here the 300 mils, or half a pint of cream, which I have just lightly whipped. And what we're going to do, in fact, is kind of fold or gently mix the mascarpone cheese and the cream together. Now, it helps to do this if you use a metal spoon or the old scraper or the spatula that I swear by. So while I'm folding the cheese through the whipped cream, just to tell you that on my right here, I have a container with 150 mils, that's a quarter pint of strong black coffee, into which I poured about 4 tablespoonfuls of the liqueur Tia Maria. So the coffee has gone cold, and we also have here 2 ounces of flaked almonds, which I have lightly toasted. Now, to toast the almonds, you could pop them in the oven while you're baking the Madeira, for example, but keep an eye on them because they do burn pretty easily. 125 grams, 4 ounces of plain chocolate, which I have just roughly chopped. So these are the ingredients we use to make or to assemble the maca bomb. So, to assemble it, here we have a pudding bowl, which we have just lined there with cling film. And make sure the cling film comes up over the edge of the bowl, because we're going to use that to cover the entire cake when we have it assembled. We start by layering the sponge mixture. I'd say you're all very familiar with tiramisu, something on the same line. So we're going to spoon the syrup onto the sponge. Then you just put a dollop of your cream mixture on top. Then you shake in some, it's really kind of rough and ready as you go along fairly quickly. The only thing I find is I put my layers at different angles coming across the cake as the cake gets bigger on top. So there we have a little one in there. We'll put that fellow there. A few more spoonfuls of our Tia Maria and coffee syrup, just to dot it on. Back again to the mixing bowl here with our mascarpone and our cream. Just layer that on. Next we have back to the container again, the chocolate and the toasted almonds. So we just basically layer it one on top of the other. It's important to remember that you finish as well with a layer of sponge. We'll drizzle on the remaining syrup. And there we have our maca bomb assembled. We now bring the cling film up and completely cover the sponge mixture with that. This now you put into a fridge for a minimum of 6 hours, but it can go into a fridge for 2 days before you want to serve your maca bomb. So we're going to leave that aside now to set. We're now going to finish it off or decorate it. So we unravel the cling film. We turn it out onto a rather large serving dish. You lift up your pudding bowl. We peel off our cling film, and wow, here we have our maca bomb. So to finish that off, we just completely coat that in whipped cream. Not good for the old cholesterol, but a treat in odd time doesn't do us any harm. So we're going to just spread the maca bomb with some whipped cream and just make sure that you have it nicely covered. Okay, do you remember we kept back some of the flaked almonds and the chopped chocolate? We're going to just spread that now over the top. There we have the cream. Nicely coated. We're just going to dust on now some of the flaked almonds and the chopped chocolate. And I like then, just to finish off, we'll go on the finer side of the grater and just work our way around. Just make sure that you've got some of the grated chocolate right over the entire bomb. And I'm serving it on a plate with some raspberries and fresh mint. So with a serrated edge knife, we cut through the bomb gently, ease the slice over onto the plate. Ooh, isn't that fantastic? I'm going to drizzle just a small amount of raspberry coulis there around the side of the plate. And there we have the finished dessert. Well, there are our 6 recipes. I do hope you've enjoyed watching, and I hope you'd equally enjoy preparing them in the comfort of your own kitchen.